And I am Bonnie Colleen. Thank you, Lance. You can always read Lance Ferguson's Skywatch even on days when we're not being broadcast at seeingbeyond.com. Well, our guest this half hour, Davida Bache, has been inspiring change in people's lives for nearly 3 decades. When Oprah Winfrey began her quest to find a new replacement for her show, she referred to the term the it factor as the primary quality she was looking for. What Oprah was referring to was a specific energy that embodies charisma, authenticity, a natural caring, a willingness to be vulnerable, and most importantly, the embodiment of being what you are saying. In other words, being authentic. When you are that, the most vital piece of partnership becomes a success. We're here with Davida Bache today, and she is certainly no stranger to success. She has evoked joy where suicide seemed the only option, health where cancer once reigned, a freedom from a myriad of medications and addictions, joyful marriages once destined for destruction, successful careers headed for the brink of disaster, and peace and calm where once turmoil and resignation reigned. In other words, she's more than a survivor. She is a thriver. Welcome back to Seeing Beyond. Good to have you, Davida.
Oh, ditto, Bonnie. Nice to hear your voice again.
Well, thank you. And yes, you have not only gone through so many major changes in your own life, but you've also helped your clients and other folks to do the same thing. And I think the challenge right now is that when we're going through these huge cataclysms, that we don't get caught in the wave, but that we're able to surf it. So we're going to be talking about that. But first of all, I'm curious. You mentioned this it factor that Oprah Winfrey was talking about. She certainly has it. It's a certain charisma that is really hard to even put your finger on. Well, define it in your terms, Davida. What is this it factor?
Well, what I've experienced in my own long journey, Bonnie, is one of the phases that I went through was my quest for understanding of religion. And I was probably 8 years old, and my parents were not a request for that, and I grew up in Pacific Palisades, and there was a Presbyterian church right on the corner, and I'd go by myself to this church, and I wouldn't go where the kids went. I would go into the main service and listen to the minister talking, and it always left me, Bonnie, with this, it was like, a dissatisfied experience, because these ministers would be talking, and what they'd say would sound good, but it didn't resonate with me. They weren't speaking from within. So I started going to all these different churches, and I finally found one where the minister was speaking from who he was and who he was being. It's real. It's real. And I know you know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, I used the word authentic earlier.
Right, same thing. So for me, here's another interesting piece, Bonnie. We talk about truth, right? Mm-hmm. And someone will say to you, this is the truth. Well, truth for one person may not be true for the next person. So what I always look for is there's a resonating experience. When someone is speaking in a real manner, if it resonates with me, then they're speaking to me. It's truth. So that's kind of the factor, that it factor is that. It's being willing to be vulnerable, being straight, being honest, and I think that the base of that all is sincerity. And you just can't manufacture that.
And you talk also with your clients and now with us about being vulnerable. What do you mean by that?
You know, that's a great question, Bonnie. In this society, vulnerable sounds like a very scary word. It means exposed. It means susceptible to danger or infiltration. Actually, what vulnerability is, and the best way that I can describe it, is if you have ever swam in the ocean without any clothes on versus having a swimsuit on, there's a total difference in that. So the explanation is vulnerability is completely being open and willing to receive everything, where your senses, everything gets touched, everything, you allow everything to come in, just like in a forest. I know Gary Douglas uses this, the founder of Access, he uses this explanation all the time of like going into the forest, and everything there is just there for your enjoyment. There's a vulnerability in that forest, an openness to receive everything. That's vulnerability, and we think, my God, if we put our guard down, if we took our bars off our doors, we'd get hurt. We'd be open to injury, and it's not that at all.
Yeah, and these times are especially important for the subject that we're talking about right now. You know, being honest with ourselves, realizing that we're always going to have change. We may resist it, but it comes nonetheless. It's like being 9 months pregnant. That baby is one way or another going to be born. So we're all going through that. But talk a little bit, Davida, about these times and how we can navigate these times in the best way.
Oh boy, these times. You know, I understand what this country is going through. I totally get it. And oh boy, the best way for me to describe this is when you're driving in a car, if a bug hits your windshield and you focus on the bug smashed on the windshield, you lose sight of the road and you run the risk of going off the road. That may sound like a little odd analogy here, but there's this scripture in the Bible that talks about where two or more are gathered, there be it. So in other words, there's this agreement and alignment with how bad something is that actually exacerbates the situation. Now, I'm not talking about if somebody gets laid off and they're supposed to go, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, how fabulous. I'm not talking about that. But everywhere I go, I lived in Korea for 9 years. I came back a couple years ago. Everybody, everywhere was talking about how bad it is, and it actually contracted that energy of possibility into doom and gloom, kind of like, the story of the sky is falling with the little hen.
I sure remember that one.
You remember that one, right?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, it's that. It's conjuring up this doom and gloom of the sky is falling, where it contracts you to the point of limiting and shutting off the energy that actually generates more possibility.
Right, and there aren't so many possibilities right now because there's so much opportunity when change is rampant. We're going to be coming back from our first break and talking more with Davida Bache about honesty, about authenticity, about these times, and how to, should I say, be really authentic. It's when we are our true selves, when we truly know who we are, that we are able to do what we're here to do. And during these times, there are lots of opportunities for exactly that. Davida, what kinds of offerings do you have for our Seeing Beyond listeners? I mean, I know that you do some counseling work with folks. How can our listeners reach you, and what can you do with them to help them to navigate these times?
Well, I'm going to be giving a couple of tips for people to kind of start stepping out of the doom and gloom mindset, which is exactly what it is. But what I provide when I'm on this program, Bonnie, is I work with individuals, I work with corporations, I work with companies, I work with children. What I'm willing to provide the service for is a 50% reduction in what my fee is, whether it be your company or whether it be an individual, for the next 30 days. And what that would look like is us spending a month together an hour a week of just starting to kind of turn the tide and shift you into that experience of what it's like living outside the box, just like Skywatch just mentioned.
Would you say that you're a coach, an intuitive? What kind of a label, if you have one, would you put on yourself, Davida?
I'm a master facilitator of change. I don't know. You know, I have tried to label myself. People have tried to label me, and what I do is so outside the box. It's almost like going to Versace and asking for a dress. He doesn't go into his library and bank of dresses. He gets to fully understand and know that person and who they are and what they want to express through their clothing and what colors they love and what feel of fabric. I do that with people's lives so that we get to finally connect with who they really are and what they require to fully express themselves in an authentic way. And one of the things that I wanted to put out here is I am able to work with, I'll go into like a corporation, and what we do is start looking at all the areas that people in their professions are holding back and how they can actually start having fun in their workplace.
Now, Davida, I am assuming that, yes, you can go in person into corporations, but that you also do a lot of your work over the telephone. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. We've got more. We're talking about change. Are you experiencing it? Then this is the program for you.